So, I played through Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc for the first time not too long ago, and the biggest thing I learned from the experience was that I should have played this one sooner. It's a visual novel game with a heavy leaning towards the murder mystery milieu, if you will. You might not know it, but I am a total sucker for murder mysteries. Seriously, I still like Heavy Rain because it's primarily a murder mystery. And this game is really cool, and there's a lot of stuff to say about it, so let's see if I can get through it all in a timely fashion, because, I just had a huge breakfast. The concept of murder mystery is what really draws me to a lot of media. They are some of my favorite books to read, many of my favorite movies and TV shows over the years have centered around the whodunit formula, and thus it follows that some of my favorite games... Yep, you got it. In fact, it's not a stretch to say that the Ace Attorney games over the years have consistently been very high up on the list of my favorite games and game franchises, and are probably some of my most memorable experiences in all of my years playing video games. A life growing up loving murder mysteries, playing point-and-click adventure games, and eventually falling in love with the Ace Attorney games basically meant I pretty much had to play Danganronpa sooner or later, even if I had no functioning idea of what these games actually were. But before I knew what was what, I had sunk 32 hours into this game in 12 days, which is a big deal for me because I'm easily distractible. I mean, Archer Season 8 finally dropped on Netflix while I was playing this game, and it's a murder mystery in of itself, and it's a really cool way to reintroduce all the characters that we know and love from over the course of the series, and I'm diverging back to business. I have to say, right now, right here, at the beginning of this review, or video essay, or whatever it is you classify this kind of video as, that Danganronpa is one of the best things I've played in so long. I have to just leave it there, because to say more is to spoil things unfairly, but if you know anything about me and based on my work on this channel or stuff that I say during live streams, then you might know that when I say a sentence like that, it comes with some stuff attached. So up front, I'm not going to spoil anything out of the gate, even though I know that it probably shouldn't be a concern because this game has been out for just shy of 7 years at this point, but I know that a significant chunk of my audience consists of people who do take me up on my game recommendations, as well as friends and associates who have yet to play Danganronpa, so I have to be a little bit conservative about how I open a video like this one. So let's just lay some stuff out right now. In order to get to the fun, juicy bits of this game, we're going to have to do some plot summary. I'm going to go through the bulk of the first case of this game to sort of give you a handle on what this game's about. Call it a sampler, if you will. And small disclaimer here, this is a murder mystery game, with the premise involving our player character discovering the bodies of victims throughout its runtime. There are scenes in this game some viewers might find disturbing, and some of those visuals are used for discussion in this video, so just a heads up. After that, the details are going to fade a bit while I rip on the game for a little while, because there's some stuff that I think comes up short in the long and scheme of it. Then after that, we'll get to what I like so much about this game. I hope you can bear with me through all of this, and if you take this journey with me, I'll order us some extra appetizers at Applebee's when we stop for lunch. Okay, thesis statement? This game succeeds for one big primary reason, and I say it's because the game defies your expectations. There it is. Here's my hilariously bad opening gambit wherein I undermine the thesis statement I just put forward. And I will do that by saying my big issue with this game is how in defying said expectations, it passes on a lot of opportunities to really create some character study moments. Which is basically the big thing that games in this genre have going for them. But it's okay, because it follows it up in its own way, and then totally sticks the landing. This game is such a double-edged, or even triple-edged sword that I really didn't know how to feel about it until pretty much the moment after the credits finished rolling. Now, a lot of this might come from the fact that I am largely new to the visual novel format, and I don't have the frame of reference that a lot of you might be expecting, and thus I can't examine this game from the perspective that some of you might be demanding, but what I can do is look at this game from my usual position of wide-eyed curiosity, excitement, and joy for video games that I usually bring to this show. So when I say that this game defies expectations, I guess I really mean it defied my expectations. I want to get to all of it, but for a game that is this purely story-heavy, it's impossible not to spoil stuff. Talking about this game past the premise is kind of like diving headfirst into a spoiler ocean, and I honestly had to think of a way to present this game without just saying spoilers at the beginning, because there's some cool stuff to talk about that involves spoilers, but doesn't spoil the whole thing overall, but might also be too much for some people, and the last thing I want to do is ruin this awesome game and these great characters for people who want to play it, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a tiered spoiler system. Basically, I'm going to rate the stuff that I'm going to talk about on a scale out of 10 to sort of let people ease themselves out of the video if they decide this is the sort of thing they could get into. Because as always, this show is about sharing games that I think are cool and interesting and allowing people to find games that are cool or interesting to play. So I want to provide an opportunity for people to make that decision for themselves. If you don't plan on playing the game, then feel free to watch indiscriminately. But, if you change your mind, I'll keep you warned. And also worth pointing out that I'm going to be speaking about this game as an isolated piece. As of the time of this writing, I'm only part of the way through Danganronpa 2, and I want to discuss this game from my perspectives as I first found it, like I always do on this channel. So yeah, I'm not going to be referring to anything else in the Danganron series, that's for another video. And, starting off our ranked spoiler experiment, we're getting revved up with some 0 out of 10 spoilers. The premise. Our hero approaches Hope's Peak Academy, explaining his station in life and all of the prep work he has done for this next school year. Hope's Peak is a school centered around educating only the students who are the top of their chosen field, prodigies of a craft, real good at something. Makoto, our player character, explains that he has spent some time online researching his new classmates and laments the idea of having to try and integrate with these so-called ultimates, as he is nothing more than a totally average kid and student chosen to attend Hope's Peak by random lottery, and owing to no special skill of his own. Suddenly, during his silent musings, the game fades to black, and Makoto wakes up to find himself inside the school, trapped with no escape, huge steel panels on all of the windows, and the school presided over by a mechanical teddy bear, who is not only perfectly tuned to be a mascot for this game and the series that will follow, but claims to be the headmaster of Hope's Peak. This is Monokuma, our primary adversary for the duration of the game, and he states that all of the students are now locked in a game of wits. They are permitted to live peacefully with each other within the confines of the school, all of their needs attended to, but if they want to go home or leave the school at all, if they want to give up this paradise that Monokuma has designed for them, they will have to do the unthinkable. Kill one of their classmates and get away with it. With the setup complete, we now know that Danganronpa is a closed-circle murder mystery, or more accurately, a series of closed-circle murder mysteries. A set of characters are trapped in a single location together, where there is no contact with the outside world, and the movement of the plot takes place purely within the locked environment. So think Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, or Murder on the Orient Express, films like The Thing, or Ex Machina, or most of the Hateful Eight, and video games like Resident Evil, or even Spike Chunsoft's own 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors. These are hard to do well, as the first thing you have to establish is a reason for our characters not to just say screw this and walk out that front door, rather than placing a bunch of zombie dogs outside or just making the weather really bad like in most of the Hateful Eight. In Danganronpa, we have an easy answer. The characters are taken prisoner. And speaking of characters, it's time we moved into a bit of 1 out of 10 spoiler territory as we are introduced to the rest of the class. While learning about the new paradigm we find ourselves in, we officially get to meet our new classmates, the ultimate talents, as it were. There's Sayaka, the ultimate pop star, Junko, supermodel and ultimate fashionista, Leon, the ultimate baseball star, Hiro, the ultimate clairvoyant, Kiyotaka, headed for politics and known as the ultimate moral compass, Celestia, the ultimate gambler, Byakuya, the ultimate affluent progeny, Sakura, the ultimate martial artist, Mondo, the ultimate biker gang leader, Chihiro, the ultimate coder and programmer, Toko, the ultimate novelist, Hifumi, the ultimate fanfic producer, Aoi, who goes by Hina, the ultimate swimming champion, and Kyoko, the ultimate something. She's not telling us yet, and now if you'll excuse me, we'll continue the script without me having to say the word ultimate for at least a little while if you don't mind. Cursory relationships begin to form as the students begin to get to know each other. Sayaka, the attractive and conveniently available pop star extraordinaire, of course immediately positions herself next to us as soon as she can, owing to a past familiarity between her and Makoto that deftly breaks the ice. She flirts with us, looks out for us, and straight up asks us to look out for her. She is attractive, a bit vulnerable, and even has an adorable catchphrase. She is this game's Maya Fey, except the implication here is significantly more rooted in the romantic angle of their relationship. Everything about how she is introduced sets Sayaka up to be our sidekick love interest. Makoto may be our player character, but Sayaka is obviously going to be the enabler to our exposition, and the primary sounding board through which our character, and by extension we the players, will come by our necessary revelations and understandings. Every Sherlock needs a Watson after all, so yeah, this is to be expected, and we can look forward to spending the rest of the game with Sayaka close by our side as we move into the start of Case 1 and some 2 out of 10 spoiler territory, so here we go! Oh, smack! Sayaka turns up murdered. That's right. Night 3 of our being locked in this bizarre school, the focal point of at least 60% of our attention thus far in this game, and our major grounding line in this bizarre adventure we find ourselves in, is found unceremoniously stabbed to death in the bathroom. It's a gruesome scene, tactfully discolored blood aside, but given how much this game wants us to get on board the Sayaka train, this manic pixie pop star has almost been weaponized in this sense. The rug has been ripped right out from under our feet, and there is a new precedent in place for the rest of the game. Anyone can die. This moment right here is actually where the game started to sink in for me. Despite how much I love the Ace Attorney games, I'm not going to hold these games up high as deep or really creative character pieces. Everybody who seems innocent probably is, and anybody who comes off as suspicious is probably guilty, and the mystery and intrigue comes from the nitty-gritty details, finding out the how and the why in addition to just the who, which is basically handed directly to us. It's thematically not that far away from shows like Law & Order, Bones, Luther, or any of the other Killer of the Week procedurals. Cool and interesting stuff happens with no real danger of having to upset your character base. It's an easy to portray murder mystery, and a lot of them in succession. I'm used to this, as are, I think, the majority of people. But in Danganronpa, the circle is closed. Anyone can die. More people are going to die, and worst of all, one of us is the killer. Which we will start to dig into now that we've hit some 3 out of 10 spoiler territory here as we begin to investigate Sayaka's murder. During our group planning meeting, while we were deciding how to proceed in the wake of one of our classmates being straight up murdered, Junko succumbs to her frustration and actually attacks Monokuma. And in the flash of an instant, as punishment for her aggression towards the headmaster, Junko becomes victim number 2. It's so quick and so sudden that Junko herself seems less horrified or scared and rather surprised at where she finds herself in that moment. God, what? This game is just John Wicking its way through these characters. Junko didn't even really do anything and she's gone, and we won't even get to investigate because there's no ceremony here. This was literally the bad guy saying, okay, you're done. Anyone can die. This game is intent on telling us this. Anyone can die. From here on out, it's a clear analog to the Phoenix Wright format. Start asking people about alibis and what they know, and start poking around the crime scene to get ready to accuse somebody of killing their classmate. Yeah, it's super easy. It's just regular Tuesday. After we collect the evidence we need, alongside Kyoko, oddly enough, who seems to be weirdly good at this, we are brought into the courtroom where we can have our first class trial with Monokuma as Judge Judy and executioner. See how I stole that joke from Hot Fuzz? I did it because I love it, but also because Monokuma is not, in fact, the jury. So Judy was just an addendum to his title of judge because the remaining students themselves will be serving as the jury. They have one chance to vote for who they think is the killer, and if they vote wrong, everybody dies. But the real killer goes free. This is where all of the setup comes to a head, as suddenly all of these friends we've just made, all of these endearing, colorful characters turn on each other, and worst of all, turn on us.
I mean, we all know Makoto killed her, right?
That's right. Makoto's room was the scene of the crime.
To put it simply, Makoto is the first major suspect in the case because of some stuff. Basically, Sayaka asked to switch rooms with us the night of the murder, which seemed innocuous enough at the time. Somebody came knocking on her door and she got freaked out, so she asked us for help. Too bad she wound up murdered in our bathroom, which of course makes us suspect number 1. It doesn't last long, and eventually we turn the group's suspicions onto the real killer, but it's a harsh moment to begin with when suddenly all of these interesting, fun characters we've just spent 2 days getting to know turn on us and start clamoring for our head on a pike. Not to mention the added anxiety from the whole everybody dies if you guess wrong thing. I think the script could have been a little stronger in this regard, but the heartbreak I felt, moderated somewhat by the fact that I knew that we were innocent, was something that I couldn't ignore. Even if it's a bit flimsy, this game hits you with some despair right out of the gate. Our best chance at friendship in this messed up murder game was just killed, and all of our potential allies are pinning it on us. We don't really have to worry though, as we head into some 5 out of 10 spoiler territory where we learn who killed Sayaka, and for the purposes of flow, we'll also learn the victim of case 2. Yeah, Leon is the killer. I mean, did you actually think those were numbers? Come on, Spike Chunsoft, this isn't my first rodeo. So yeah, Leon totally did it, and he totally gets killed for it. Death by pitching machine. Tastes like irony. Almost about as ironic as the fact that Sayaka played us like a properly tuned violin. That's right, Leon tells us before he gets pummeled that Sayaka lured him into what he totally thought was her room because of how she set it up. The long and short of it is that Sayaka wrote Leon a note telling him that they had to discuss something, and then when they met up, she attacked him. And he maintains that Sayaka wound up dead as an act of self-defense, but went with it because he kinda wanted to go home anyways. Sayaka switched rooms with us. She lured Leon into our room, even switched the name tags on our doors to make sure he didn't think something was up, with the intention of killing him. And the only reason Leon's hypothetical death didn't get pinned on us was that everything backfired on Sayaka, and she wound up dead instead. The heartbreak never ends in this game. I gotta say right now, I really respect this game's glee at punishing us when we dare to get attached to these characters, but I find myself getting anxious when I consider the implications of who's dying and when. Yes, my expectations are being defied, but these story angles are kinda getting the shaft. Sayaka might have been an obvious plant on the part of the writers, but she's still nice to have around at first, and Junko and Leon seemed cool, but they're gone. Obviously, the plot isn't going to move forward unless some murders take place, but if there's one thing this game did right, it was get me attached to these characters. The backgrounds that these characters came from, the situations they arose out of to come here to Hope's Peak Academy had me interested in wanting to know more. I want to know about the hardships and challenges that Sayaka and her girl group went through to get famous. I want to know what tarnishes the sheen on a career that is essentially forcibly tailored to appear like everything is always awesome. Junko makes throwaway statements about the differences between her real appearance and her photo spreads that really draw attention to the idea that those photos might be her, but that she is not those photos. And her personality goes far beyond the two-dimensional page everybody knows her from. Leon complains that even though he was the best at baseball, the politics and expectations of the game clashed with his bad boy casual attitude, and in the end he had to give up the game in order to feel comfortable with himself. And Chihiro, who is the most unfortunate victim of Case 2, is introduced to us as a diminutive, shy girl who clearly harbors issues about her own strength and presence in the world, but has learned how to make computers do whatever she wants. Something that, despite the prevalence of these machines in modern life, is a power that the vast, vast majority of people in society could never dream of acquiring. All of these characters die far too early in my mind, and my first time through this game, I was pissed that we weren't going to learn how Junko feels about being defined by 2D facsimiles of the real her, or how Chihiro contextualizes being physically weak and small while simultaneously holding on to the kind of power that could probably bring the entire internet to its knees if she felt like making it happen. To her, we are but ants. Now, I will say that daytime hangouts and the optional school mode offer a solid chance to follow up with these characters and get to know them a bit better, but in most of these cases I do feel like the real character depth gets dodged or skirted around. For instance, Leon does admit that he clashed with the politics of baseball, but then goes on to explain that he actually hated the game, and was really only in on it to get girls and scholarships. That's a pretty, well, alright angle, actually, but it is kind of brought down a bit when you try and get to know Sayaka, and literally the only thing she can think to talk about is, hey, who do you like? Do you like someone? Aren't you gonna ask me if I like anyone? Yeah, it's kind of missing some weight or significance, if you ask me. For as much as these stories go largely unfinished, the game does recontextualize these characters, often post-mortem, which I feel a little weird about, because I always feel strange when characters are offered character development posthumously with the subject character in absentia, because unless it's a big part of the story or the mystery or whatever, it's like, isn't the point of all of this to see how it affects that character? So, okay, I've done a lot of complaining about how this game plays fast and loose with some really cool story angles, and as much as those are disappointments, the ultimate conceit of anyone can die comes with a small addition that I say rearranges this game in a big way. Indeed, anyone can die, but anyone can surprise you. The moment that this game really shocked me, that I really knew that this game was going to stick with me, was when it became apparent to me that these conflicts I was looking forward to exploring are really just the ones that the game throws away and goes, "Peh, too easy." Because the cast that follows us late into the game are, not the ones that I would have put money on going the distance, if you know what I mean. Just about all of them absolutely scream, yeah, they'll do fine for an ensemble cast, just keep the spotlight on that top billing, please. But what's to be done when you kill off your pop star, your roguish bad boy, the straight up bad boy, the computer genius? That's your A-team right there! Well, anyone can die, but anyone can surprise you. It was seconds after being introduced to Hina the first time that I decided pretty thoroughly that she wasn't long for this world. Understated looks, overly energetic but shallow demeanor, even her talent isn't that remarkable. Ultimate swimming champion? I mean, come on, there are plenty of swimming champions, and we're all sick of Mark Spitz at this point, aren't we? What about the ultimate pop star, ultimate gambler, ultimate computer genius, ultimate novelist? How is it that an author has managed to command such respect from all corners of the literary world that they have decided her to be the de facto best author, and for that author to be a high school student? Unbelievable, but that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, and despite being outclassed as fundamentally as she is, Hina remains as one of the most vocal and steadfast members of the cast, and if you ask me, walks out of this game with the award for most memorable. Sakura, whose appearance in the first seconds of our knowing her is played off for a laugh, shoves aside the remarks of her masculine appearance which undercut her femininity to receive one of the most complex stories and motivations we see in this game. Toko, this game's bookish hair tied back shy girl who is probably supposed to get the "oh, you're actually very pretty with your glasses off" transformation that turns her into our new favorite, is the total opposite. She's openly hostile and unpleasant to everyone around her, and she totally throws the whole sexy revelation thing out the window when the transformation that she does receive makes her even more unpleasant and undesirable, and even turns her into a literal serial killer. Anyone can die, but anyone can surprise you, and those surprises will be various and far-reaching. And what I love most is how this game is perfectly aware of how haphazard its character spread ends up becoming. Nothing about the relationships that form by the end feels smooth or rehearsed. Byakuya and Toko remain unpleasant and obstinate, Hiro is just useless, and even Kyoko, who more or less slides into the empty space Sayaka leaves in the wake of her untimely exit, remains quiet and closed off, even as she becomes your closest ally and confidant in the home stretch of the game. After so long in this protracted traumatic experience, you expect these people to be friends because that's how it always goes with these things, we're told. And Makoto even refers to them as such, but if you ask me, I think they're more like allies than anything else, with Makoto really being the only grounding line they all have in common. The wider relationships of this game are uneasy and suspicious, and that's kind of exactly where they should be. These people are killing each other for frackin' frack. It feels so much more calculated and realistic than everybody just gets along because that's how it ought to be. When I set out to write the script, I was fully prepared to shred this game for dismissing what could have been its best and most interesting characters pretty much right out of the gate. I vague tweeted my frustrations with the full intention of being unkind to a game that for all intents and purposes had me more engaged than just about anything else I had played or have played in a long time. I wanted to rip and tear at this game that dared to kill off Sayaka, Leon, Junko, and Chihiro, who could have been timeless, awesome characters, and I wouldn't rest until the rest of the world knew how pissed I was, but eventually, by the end, the game itself quietly turned me around and asked, are they the ones you care about? The love interest, the smart one, the pretty one, the bad boy? Isn't that the same team build that every boring, overdone teen story ends up having? The high-wire act of this affair is making the player live through and experience the rapid-fire murderings of these colorful, interesting characters in a game where the chief mechanic is very specifically getting to know these characters, and pitting the hope that these characters hold on to against the crushing despair of everything around them. That's pretty daring. There's a reason most murder mysteries quickly toss together a throwaway cast so one or more of them can die while our heroes do the solving, but it's this cast that is doing the solving and the killing, and the rest of the game is about making them feel as real as possible in this struggle. I saw none of what Danganronpa had to offer coming. When people say something defied their expectations, I find they often mean something wound up being good when they figured it wasn't going to be, and that is in essence what happened with me and Danganronpa. But I do in fact mean that it went as far as to shatter my impressions of what a story should be, and got me to almost completely rearrange what I wanted to happen for the sake of characters I was at one point certain I wasn't going to care about by the end. Which is where we're just going to get into some 10 out of 10 spoilers at this point, because as far as I'm concerned, everything I'm going to talk about here constitutes the reason to play this game. 10 out of 10, everything important. Here we go. My first impression, cool characters are dispatched almost out of hand, and their stories go unfinished, cut short by a quick, bloody, almost dismissive end, only to turn around and leave me literally speechless by the end of Case 4. Seriously, no other game has done this to me. I wanted to put some pictures of box arts of games that you thought should have done this, but no, that would defeat the purpose. At times, I felt that the game was too wordy, but that was before I realized that if these characters didn't have the input in the story that they did, I wouldn't care half as much about them. And that's where they get you. It doesn't matter if the story or background of a character is interesting, hearing them speak, learning about them in the moment, that's what makes them interesting. Sakura's real impact on the story might not have anything to do with her status as a martial arts goddess, but finding out that not only did she commit suicide to atone for her transgressions, but that she was in fact physically attacked by the two people she hoped to make peace with before passing into the next world carried so much more weight after having known her for 3 chapters previous, hearing her opinions and reactions in response to the rest of the group carrying on as usual. But the real haymaker here is seeing Hina take a dive from her normally hyper, happy, overdone attitude into the kind of crushing despair that would drive her to misdirect the investigation and attempt to sacrifice the lives of everyone here if it means her personal brand of justice is met. Remember, accuse the wrong killer and everyone dies. And it's not an easy transformation. She is clutching at straws, trying to grasp whatever kind of wrath she can conjure and bring it down upon everybody in sight regardless of their involvement in this tragedy. Even going so far as to implicate herself in the death of her friend so that she can exact scorched earth revenge on whomever she can manage. Case 4 of this game hit me like almost nothing else in fiction ever has. It left me a special kind of speechless. It struck me on a personal level, playing on anxieties I have about one day not receiving forgiveness for future mistakes, or even worse, a moment wherein I am not able to afford forgiveness to someone else. I'm worried that my various spoiler warnings throughout this video have stopped people from watching this far, because it's right here that I add Danganronpa to the list of games that have reached me, alongside titles like The Beginner's Guide and Hotline Miami. Games that rearranged me, changed the way I think about not just things, but life. It's not very often you get to commune with fictional characters on a sort of real level, especially in video games, but I would say that Hina's reaction to Sakura's death in Case 4 of this game came the closest I have ever seen to conveying the effect and power of a friendship transformed in the face of tragedy. My big issue with Danganronpa in the beginning was how I figured this game should use this unique and weird opportunity to explore a character's backstory, what life was like before being imprisoned. I thought it should be some kind of analog to Lost, Orange is the New Black, or The Good Place, where we're always getting flashbacks about what life was like before this paradigm shift. But in rejecting that format, this game goes all in on developing these characters after their life has been upended, during their crisis. I wanted to know how these characters related to the world, but this game's not about society, it's about these characters, how they relate to each other. It's about how Hina talks to Sakura, how Byakuya and Kyoko become adversaries of circumstance, how Makoto is just trying to keep everyone from tearing each other apart. The characters in this moment are always the primary focus of the game, and everything else just kind of fades into the distance, all in an effort to focus on that central conceit. Anyone can die, but anyone can surprise you. The game gives us 3 mysteries to solve at any given time. 1, who is going to die next / who killed the latest victim. 2, who is doing this to us. And 3, what is happening in the outside world. And what I love about how these questions are handled is that it gets less and less interesting as it gets further and further away from the characters. Every chapter starts off with the remaining classmates posing and pondering on questions about what has happened outside Hope's Peak Academy, often manifest in their attempts to escape their weird prison, which are consistently followed by musings on just who or what is doing this to them. All of this fades away when a body appears and we begin the hunt for who done it. Question 1. Someone died. The characters are affected, nothing but hard facts, to the point and efficient. Thus, we will find out exactly who did it and why. Question 2. Who has enacted this twisted game upon us, the logistics of which are kinda up in the air? I mean, all this food, entertainment, and comfort provided to us, and an omniscient teddy bear who kills on a whim, yeah, it's kind of abstract, and we will find out who is responsible, but the how and the why, well, they kinda parallel the killing game in itself. Abstract and secondary to the participants of the game. Question 3. What has happened to the world outside? Well, it's never specified. Monokuma tells us that the world ended, society collapsed in the wake of a terrible tragedy, and maybe that's all it needs to be. Remember, looking at this game specifically, does what happened on the outside need to be a part of what's happening inside, or can we just allow it to be a framing device? The instigator, if you will. Everything about the wider world and story of this game is ambiguous and ill-defined, relegated to some mystifying, scary space in the back of our imaginations. But the crushing weight of it all is cast aside for a detailed, intimate examination of these characters who stand, shaky and clinging together, the tiniest flame of hope left within them to light the way through the crushing, unstructured, overwhelming darkness of despair. There is a time and a place for these other things. I write this while I am am also playing Virtue's Last Reward, another title by Spike Chunsoft, and ultimately a game that delights in sending you in 9 different directions all at once within what is essentially a bottle episode, and promising to follow up on all of them. And just last video, I went into great detail about how Final Fantasy IX has an almost perfectly constructed world and well-defined characters, but in Danganronpa, everything else fades into the distance. And that might be the key to the whole experience. Everything that matters is given to us via the characters, who have somehow managed to overcome a calculated assault on their very sense of hope, turning it into the very vehicle of despair, placing their dreams, comfort, and desires, things that we hope and strive for, on the other end of the receiving line, sowing despair in the lives of the people who would call them friends. And knowing that even if they persevere, even if by some miracle they manage to make it out alive without being totally hollowed out by the end, that the world outside that awaits them is only more smothering miasmatic despair, keeping that flame of hope alive, holding on to all they've got left, is the real statement of this game. Hope doesn't die easy. It goes down fighting.